Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. Before we get started, please consider subscribing to my channel and possibly becoming a patron. Now in this video I'm going to have a look at idle up. Now a subscriber prompted this video asking me about how to set this up in OpenTX. Now when I used to fly nitro or glow engines, I used to use my trim tab to adjust the idle, but they wanted to know how to do this in OpenTX where you could put this onto a switch. So now in this video I'm going to show you two methods because there's always different ways and there's probably other ways of doing it in OpenTX. The first method I used was using curves and the second was using global variables. Now I feel the global variable one would be the easiest one to adjust at the field. Now obviously with a glow engine you're standing in front of that prop when you start that motor up. So what I've done is in both examples I've added flight modes, so that on the front of the radio you will be able to see what mode you're in. So when you go to fire up your engine you can see which idle you're in, either on normal or 1 or 2, and I did that for safety reasons. So obviously be very careful when you're doing this. But anyway, let's switch over to OpenTX Companion and we'll have a look at the settings. Now the first one we're going to do is idle up with a curve. So let's open that model. And first thing we're going to do is go to flight modes, and you can see I've set up flight mode idle low, idle up 1 and idle up 2. Then we go to the inputs, they stay the same. Then we're going to go, let's skip out the mixes and go to the curves. So you can see here I've set up two curves and it's I1 and I2. So if I flick, you'll see, if you look carefully at the bottom of the screen, you can see where the idle is jumping up and down. So I've set up two of those curves. Now all that's a case of doing is changing it from 5 points to 2 points and then dragging your pointer to wherever you want it to be. So this one should be on 95. Okay, now you'll need to adjust this so that you can get the correct idle that you want. So that's why I think it might be better to do this with global variables, where you can just go and change the global variable, but you can make that decision up yourself. So we have two curves there. You can see one is higher and one is lower. Then we go back to the mixes. So on the mixes line we are going to have to first take our standard throttle line, and you can see everything is as it normally would be, but put the switch, whichever switch you want to use. In this case, this person asked for switch G. So in the forward position, you would have your throttle servo right down. Okay, then we add a second line, and in here, the source is going to be the input 3, the weight 100. Then we have to select under curve, and then pick the curve number 1. And then the switch has to be SG in the middle position. That's everything for there. If we now go to the second line so that we can have two idle ups, number 1 and 2, then in here you're going to again, now the curve, so the weight is 100%, the curve will be your CV, your curve number 2, I2, and the switch SG in the back position. So, and for safety I went into the special functions and I used the sounds that were the standard sounds.
Idle off, idle up 1, idle up 2.
There we go. So now we can demonstrate this, and if we let's just reset this, hit the model key again, and you can see our throttle is there. And if we now push the switch into the middle position, you can see it's gone up. That will be 2.5%. And then if we go, and now that's gone up to that would be 10%. So there you can see it's working. Okay. Now let's have a look at the second version of this. Quickly go through that. This one we're going to use global variables. So again, all the flight modes, I've set the flight modes up, idle low, idle up 1 and idle up 2. The inputs are the same. We've obviously got no curves in here. but we are going to have a look at the global variables. Now for each one of the idle up positions, you'll need two global variables. So there you can see the first one is global variable 1, I put 95 and then 5. And as you can see, they add up to 100. And then on the global variable 3, I put 90, and then in global variable 4, I put 10. Now, if we go over to the mixes, you can see now, instead of putting the curve in on the offset, so if we, obviously the first line is at the standard is a standard throttle line. The second line, which we add in, you can see the input is throttle. Now you can see under the weight and under the offset, I've chosen global variable 1 and global variable 2 for the first idle up setting, and then the switch in the middle position. And for the second one, you can see there I've got the source is the input throttle, and now you can see its weight is global variable 3 and offset is global variable 4 with the switch in the back position. So this is going to give you exactly the same result as it would using curves. So you could decide which one you want to use. This one would be easier on the radio, I think, to go in at the field and change the global variables to make the slight adjustments that you need to do. But again, be very careful, because you know, you've got a glow engine whizzing around and you're playing around with the settings, but you should know that from using glow engines to make sure you're cautious with that. So if we click OK, again, I put special functions in with the sounds. So if we simulate, we will get the same result as we did with the curves. So we hit the model key, we go here, just going to reset this, and if we watch the throttle channel, there we go, and idle up 2, and there you go, and there you go. You can see the resulting movement in your throttle. Now I tested this with a servo to make sure everything worked properly, but as I say, please be careful when you're setting this up with because you're standing in front of that engine when you fire it up, so you want to make sure you get these settings 100%. I don't fly petrol or glow engines anymore. I fly electric. It doesn't mean one day I won't have another go at flying a glow engine, but I just like how clean electric motors are. You don't have to get home and clean all your planes. So anyway, but just be cautious when you're setting that up. I hope this helped you, and if it did, please give a thumbs up, and if it didn't, give a thumbs down. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comment section below. And if I can help you with anything else, please let me know and leave a comment in the description. Thanks for watching. Happy flying. Bye for now.